And we are recording. Hello, Nelson. How are you?
Good afternoon, Michael. How are you?
I am doing really well. And I'm really happy that you found the time out of your busy schedule to talk to me today, because we have a lot to talk about, a lot of amazing, interesting things that you do. We're going to talk about trauma release therapy, inner psychology. We're going to talk about PTSD, anxiety, depression, the whole thing. So this is going to be an amazing podcast, guys. You're going to learn a lot about yourself, some techniques and things, what Nelson does, and also going to find out a little bit about Nelson's story. So how did you become, working with trauma release therapy?
Well, I'm an experiencer of early childhood trauma, um, and, uh, uh, and I have overcome depression a few years back, and the result was it more happened more so I think later on in life when I was around 37, where I had gone through about 15 years worth of doing the same thing, which I've gotten very good at, which was essentially more to do with sales and consulting. But I guess depression just sort of blindsided me, and I wasn't really quite motivated and inspired by life much anymore. I had a family, like a healthy family, home. I had everything that a guy could ask for. A supportive wife, very loving, very tolerant of my idiosyncrasies. And um,
That's always a bonus.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And so when I got hit with depression, I just felt like I just didn't have any energy. And I couldn't move out of bed. I couldn't engage with my family. It was terrible. And I got to a point where months had gone by and I couldn't really function properly. And so I did what any guy would do. I'm desperate at that point. I prayed. I go, if this is what it takes, because I'm not Catholic, even though I'm born and raised Catholic, I don't practice. So I figured, okay, let's pray. And I use a lot of emotion, and I cried. I want to live my life. Tell me what I need to do. And I got hit with a vision, and it was more just a reminder of the question, who are you? Who do you think you are? And I decided to pursue that whole component at 2 o'clock in the morning, and it's saying, "Oh, you're being summoned to be awakened." And I go, "It's 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm awake." So
What are you talking about?
exactly, and so I went to understand what that was all about, and I've read some books on spirituality that had to do with someone by the name of Robert Shapiro, who would be considered a shamanic healer and or channel in Arizona, and he explained a lot to me. And then I researched Eckhart Tolle, Power of Now, and I thought, let's go to one of his retreats, and found out what the cost was, and I said I can't do that. So, and then I went to another one in Orangeville, and that's where I learned the process of the unloading. And I found, wow, okay, this is working for me, and I awakened, and I had a very spiritual out of body experience with nature, and felt the connection of all that is through the trees and the root systems and so on and so forth. And then I exited that place, and felt like a brand new person. And my wife asked, "How are you feeling?" I go, "I feel like a woman trapped in a man's body." And what that meant was I was actually now more in tune with the divine feminine within me, which was the ability to open up to emotional states, become more emotionally intelligent, become more open and allowing of other people's fields and how they were feeling, and to be more in tune with it so that I could actually address what their needs were. So after that, I decided I wanted to, experiment with Reiki, because I figured it's a healing modality. I'm interested in helping people do what I was able to do if they wanted to. And it led me down the path to that, and I felt that there was more to it. There was a prying need, say, hey, there's more than just support. We need to start addressing things that are deeper here, because there was a pulling to go there. And I found Dr. Brad's emotion documentary. We explored it, went to go see him in Arizona, and found the modality. I saw the presentations live on stage, saw the immediate benefits for people that had really severe nervous issues or issues regarding self-confidence and self-empowerment, and I bought in. I said, okay, this feels good, and my emotional authority was saying yes. this is a safe practice to go with, and it's easy for you to learn. And but you need to understand more about this stuff. So I explored emotions, psychology more so. And as I was certifying and working with people, I was experiencing profound results from the people that I was serving. People that had pains for years and years and years that the doctors couldn't diagnose. We found out that there was trauma buried. I guided them through the release. They didn't feel pain afterwards. So, and consistently throughout that period, it did not return. So I knew that that I had something, and Dr. Brett had something. And since then, I've been practicing this modality, and I've been expanding on it. And it's been a wonderful empowering, inspirational, motivational. Let's just say that I don't have that issue regarding that weight on my chest that keeps me in my bed. Now I have this spark that sort of jumps me out of bed every day. And that's really what life's all about, is finding out that spark that lights you up. And my life theme is consciousness. And so I find that if I can raise people's level of consciousness, then I am actually doing my work. And I feel like I could do this till my last breath.
Yeah, no, that's really important too. It's amazing how the journey goes, where I think a lot of us and a lot of people out there listening, that's why I was very excited to have you on, because I think a lot of people are out there right now. They're kind of in this purgatory state where, we've all battled depression at some level. I know I've been battling it for years, and to go through that process and through my own traumas and just my own experimentation with working with my emotions and figuring things out and getting healing and stuff like that. But I think a lot of people are out there right now, especially with this whole COVID thing right now, losing their jobs, and people are going to depression. It's like, okay, what am I going to do now? What am I going? And it's really forcing people to go within and to figure out what's going on. What's that program that's underlying all this stuff that I'm feeling or I'm not feeling? For the most part, what we do in our normal daily lives is just basically trying to somehow suppress what all those icky feelings, I like to call them, underneath. And it's so often that we use our jobs, family, relationships, money issues, all like a distraction, just to keep us busy and to keep the mind busy so we don't have to feel those feelings. And I think it's really important. And it wasn't until I actually started releasing my emotions, how liberating that is. I mean, I don't know about you, but it literally feels like a weight lifting off the shoulders.
Yeah. And for me, when I did my retreat work, it felt like it was me excavating a lot of this stuff that was stored within. And as soon as I had emptied out enough, joy filled the gap right away. Because then I think joy filled the gap, I think probably because our soul's like, I'm so relieved to have this off of me, like that core part. And you just feel that warmth that starts to emanate from within you. And it's like, wow, like I feel like I've been removed from parched soil and put into a new place where the soil is infinitely fertile, and it just nourishes you, and it will continue to nourish you, and you just can feel like you can grow from there. And the whole point of that growth is that it's never ending. Like sometimes as men we think, hey, why can't people just accept me how I am? Well, there is that stagnancy that comes from just being that way all the time, because then what ends up happening is you're creating a restriction for yourself. And we really want to start growing beyond that, because we're trying to enter into a new age where love is more of the priority, or the place to be, instead of the matrix, where it just tries to keep you into a state of fear, demoralizing you, and so on and so forth. And I think most people just aren't in touch with what really lights them up, and but that they can expand from that. And that's where our work is so important, because we're trying to reignite a part of people that they're afraid to reveal.
Yeah, I think that's really scary. I know I just talked yesterday with a lady, and we really discussed that there's a lot of fear around becoming the authentic version of yourself. And I'm very much that same person. It took me a long time. Like I said, I was in the spiritual closet for the longest time. I didn't talk to anybody. I mean, I've been researching and doing stuff just trying to get my toe into it, but I would never tell anybody that I'm a psychic medium. I wouldn't. I mean, I had people that knew that were my close circle, and the very people that I just seemed to trust. I wouldn't talk about that. But then even doing this podcast was another way of me just opening up and sharing. Okay, this is me. No more of this. I mean, I was working in television for years, and I just felt. And that's the thing about television, and it's not all bad. I'm not going to say it's all bad, but for the most part, it's so fucking fake. And the people are there. There's so much. It's so fucking toxic. It's just, and it's all those years I spent there just being bullshit. Just, you got to be this person. You got to be this person. And meanwhile, inside,
Yeah.
I'm thinking, this so fucking sucks. And I don't really
Yeah.
want to fucking sell another goddamn piece of cookware. You know what I mean? It's like, but you know, I mean, there was a lot of great things about it. I know I bash a little bit about it, but it's just, I fully understand the need to become more authentic and speak out and do that. But I wanted to ask you about the emotion code and body code, because I think that's really important, because I want people out there who are suffering, who maybe have like this anxiety, maybe are going through depression, and maybe they have PTSD and stuff like that. I really want them to kind of know that, hey, there is these modalities out there and they are available to them. So if you could just kind of touch on the emotion code first, and then we go into the body code, because I think we'll start with emotion, because I'm a big thing about emotions. I love and hate emotions at the same time. I'm one of those that's like, oh, I love releasing it, but just going to the icky stuff, it drives me nuts. Like, it's like, again, I got to deal with that shit like just coming up. But I
Yeah.
want to make sure that people know and empowering them, because I really appreciate that when you talk about empowering people to make those choices and to see that light. It's amazing. So if you could just talk about the emotion code and just briefly what you do with that particular modality.
All right. Well, when I was being presented to it, it was just allowing the body to respond in yes and no. So learning about that and trying to find whether there's an imbalance and how they can find congruency. So we would have the person be standing up on stage, and if they say, well, my name is, I say, if it was me on stage, my name is Nelson, my body would sway forward. If my name is Pokemon, my body would sway backward, right? Because that isn't congruent. So the field can actually push and pull you.
So it's
And
like it's kind of like your body, instead of like it's a way of muscle testing in some ways. Like, you give me a yes, give me a no,
yeah,
but instead of
except it's
using the whole
field.
body.
Except
Yeah.
you can also use like finger tests, and you can use arm tests where you're trying to see, you know, if you're extending your arm out and you want to find out if it's strong or if it's weak, right? So there's that involved, and that's just a guide through the process of going through this chart. So
Okay.
when we're looking at this chart here and we have all
Well,
these emotions on the list, right? Now
okay.
this is tip of the iceberg for the work that I do. I've expanded to 5 times what the amount of variances and frequencies of emotions that there
Okay.
are.
No. Okay,
So
Nelson. I'm just trying to. I don't mean to interrupt you. I know you're in the flow,
yep,
but I have this on an audio podcast too. So for those listening, he did put up a list of emotions, stuff like that. Can you just kind of just briefly read through these emotions that you kind of work with, so that the audio listeners will kind of understand what's going on?
sure, absolutely. So let's say if you have the heart, so if it's in row 1, column A, it would be abandonment, betrayal, love unreceived. If it was in column B, it'd be heartache, insecurity, vulnerability. And these are all excessive levels of these emotions, right? So if you were to experience like a 1 or a 2 out of 10, you'd probably be able to process that on the spot. But when we get into something that's really big, it's hard for us to let it flow. So what ends up happening is, because we decide not to let it flow, we keep it in. And it's important for us to let those emotions flow. So in other rows, there's 6 rows, 2 columns, A and B. And let's say if it was in the glands and sexual organs, there would be unhealthy pride, shame, unworthiness. If it's in column A, jealousy, overwhelm, humiliation. So
It sounds like
so
you're
that's
reading
just
my therapist notes. It's like, wait a
so
minute, I know that. Yeah,
mhm.
yeah, I know that one. Yep, yep, yep. That's me. Yep.
So that's the beautiful thing about this, is that with emotion code, I'm not asking the person to allow the subconscious to surface unpleasant things on the spot and have them like go there and dive deep into there and let things surface that they can grab and bring up to conscious awareness. The body just sort of says, okay, this is what is ideal for you to release. So it takes the whole effort out of looking for or waiting for stuff that's unpleasant to surface. So we just say, okay, so you have abandonment, let's say at 28 because you broke up or you had a divorce with your wife, right?
Yeah.
And you had to leave her because of, narcissistic behavior, that sort of thing. So we go under that, and then, or maybe they left you. And then we go and find out, okay, so is there more than one of abandonment that we need to release today? More than two? And the body would then respond accordingly. There is more than one.
Okay.
There is more than two. Because later on down the road, if you want to go into another relationship, the soul's saying, you want another relationship. I know you want one, but you can't have a fear of abandonment.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
you want to be feeling trustworthy, like the next person, that you can trust them, and then using your intuition to say, this is the right person at the right time. So when we request, what is the amount of intention that's going to be required to release either the trapped emotion of abandonment, or maybe even a really distinct abandonment. Let's say you're one of your parents leaving the family because it's just not working out in the home, and they abandon you, and you have that really strong resonance of abandonment you're struck with for like days and days and days. Some of that stuff requires more effort to release.
Yeah.
And so when we find out how much intention is going to be required to release it, it's all about asking how many times do we have to trigger the somatic nervous system again and again while we verbally request the release of the trapped emotion or the resonance of the abandonment from those times of our lives. And as we release that, if the memories surface up, I tell them just allow it to surface, because it's the energy that we're releasing, and then once we're done, it will likely fade away. And then that's it, and we can move on. And then we can allow the body to confirm whether or not that is in the process of being released in its entirety. Once that's done, the person doesn't have to think about it anymore.
It's not there.
No, it takes some time to go, because
integrate,
so there's going to be, like, how do I say this? There is such thing as biophotons, right? So therefore, there is in the ether of our body, there is energy stored in there. So it takes time for it to percolate out. So as we do some light walking afterward, or we ground, then that stuff is being essentially jettisoned bit by bit over the course of maybe 5 or 6 or 7 days. By the time you hit that time, you feel lighter, you feel a little bit more. If you're releasing abandonment, you're going to not feel as closed off. You're going to feel safe to open up again.
Yeah. And that's, it's interesting you talk about that. That's one of the core issues I had to deal with. My father passed away when I was really, really young, but prior to that too, as well, I was hospitalized because I had to deal with a lot of childhood health issues when I was very, very young. So I was hospitalized for pneumonia. So, but my parents, I just remember being sick, waking up in the oxygen tent, and this in this again in the 70s, and my parents weren't around, right? So as a young child, that was terrifying. So there was that abandonment there, and then the next year, my father dies of cancer. So that really was ingrained into the subconscious mind of abandonment. So I always had a fear of relationships with that, because I just could not connect. I just there was a part of me, even though that soul, like you're saying, it was just a definite part of it, I could not connect. It just as much as I tried, like, no way, no, I can't, no. It just blocked off.
Because some of the emotions start to fuel certain thought forms. Like, for example, if you have abandonment, then it's like, no one's there for me.
Yeah.
Right. Because you might repeat that in your psyche while you're actually experiencing this sense of loss of connection. No one's supporting me. No one's there for me. And that feeds into future, because what we say and what we're thinking often enough, it somehow manifests into our reality. And as it creates a pattern, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And that's the thing we want to address, is we don't want to create that self-fulfilling prophecy. We want people we want to invite people and embrace people that want to love and support us and nurture us and be there for us in our most difficult times. But if we say, it's okay, I'm going to get sick and then no one's going to be there for me. No, that's got to stop. We got to reverse that. And that's one thing I like about my work, is that I've learned it's not just about releasing the emotions. It's about addressing the thought forms and then reversing them towards states where, there are many people in the world out there that truly empathize, and they truly care, and they want to be there for me, because they're going to see my value in their life, and they want to support me so that I can reciprocate later on.
Yeah, that's really important. So, Nelson, if you just touch briefly on thought forms, because there's a lot of people who are new to my channel and stuff like that, and sometimes they don't always have, when you hear these kind of weird things like, "What's a thought form?" Because I've, I've had like comments like, "I've heard this thing on thought forms. What is it? What is it? What is it talking about?" So, just talk about what a thought form is for people who are listening.
All right, so emotions are energy requiring a neurological program. So what ends up happening is that now it needs an outlet to channel into a imagined reality. And what ends up happening is that that visual that we create within our mind can then become form moving forward. So thought form, meaning what you visualize as a reality comes into form as you put more energy into it.
Okay, that makes
That's
total sense. Yeah.
yes.
They always
It's
talk about what you think about, you bring about in so many
mhm.
ways. It's
Yeah.
kind of simplistic form. So from the emotion code to the body code, how much different? Now it's just very body specific. So it deals with people who are more have physical ailments versus the emotions. But I know emotions are very much attached to the physical body anyway. So and a lot of times that could actually cause the physical symptoms.
Mhm.
So is the body code part of your technique, is that just specifically for like somebody has like a bad back or knees or heart condition or something like that? Is it specifically for that?
Well, it does expand and allow more detailed. How do I say this? Body code would be like the clinical version of energy healing, where because it's made by a doctor and he brings in his like whether it's the spinal system, the muscular system, the endocrine system, the nervous system, and he integrates all the systems into the program. So if we wanted to find out that someone had shame and ostracized and belittled and humiliated, and all of that was trapped in the metatarsals of their foot, which is an experience that I had with a client of mine that I both had at the metaphysical show and then later helped him out furthermore. Um, what was funny was that when we discovered that all of this stuff was in, and he couldn't really walk on his foot. He was um, clinically disabled. Like he could barely
Wow.
put enough pressure on his foot, and he had issues regarding um, his. I think it was mental. He also had some challenges regarding being accepted by family for his impediments and his disability, and I guess he was made fun of in school and at home with cousins and so on and so forth. And maybe he just curled up into a ball and had his hands around his feet and just could channel that energy into a certain part of his to where it was stored. And lo and behold, we start releasing these things, and he was at a 9 out of 10 on the pain scale before he met me. And then within about, I would say, 30 minutes, we released about, I think, 6 or 7 trauma energies from the foot, from the metatarsal
Wow.
and the tendons. And then about 15 to 20 minutes later, he came back to the booth and he goes, "It feels so much better." I go, "If you were to give it a number out of 10, what did it feel like?" Like a 5 or a 6. So if you
Wow,
can
that's a
get from
huge
a
difference.
9 to a 5 or a 6 with just a few, I think later on down the road, I think months later, I reached out and said, "How are you doing? And did you want some more?" And since he was on disability, he didn't have a lot of money, so he just paid what he could, and I accepted that. And we worked on it some more. We released another 15 to 20 trauma energies,
Wow, that's
and
fantastic.
by the end of it, he replied back in about a week, and he goes, "I can finally walk no problem on that foot, and the only time it sores at the end of the day."
Wow. Just from repetitive stuff like that. And it's amazing because his whole body has to shift and change and change because his gait has been like that particular gait for so long. So the body has to readjust. But that's
Mhm.
amazing because there's such a new thing with energy psychology. I think it's the new way of going. I spent a lot of time in therapy and a lot of traditional therapy, and it was good and really got me to a certain place. But as I noticed more when they started involving like EMDR and EFT and things like that, it just changed my therapy. Like it went from like, okay, this is okay, just keeping me sane and not going to go over the edge and do something really
Mhm.
stupid. But till then, it was like, man, I started feeling release. I could feel the emotions, and I just thought, man, this is the way to go. So it was like, okay, forget about the other crap. Just whatever. It's like, give me the EMDR, give me the EFT. Let's not do this other kind of talk stuff, which is, it's nice. But
Yeah.
for the most part, energy psychology releasing, because it's all about that stored energy. I'm a big fan of Dr. Joe Dispenza and his work, and he always talks about that stored energy and how it gets trapped in the body, but in the vibration. But I think it's fabulous that you're doing. So, do you have certain techniques within your system of motion code and body code that deals with anxiety and PTSD specifically, or is it just an overall? Do you target things specifically? Let's say somebody comes in for anxiety, or they have PTSD, or their depression. Do you have something specific that you do for them, or is it just
Well,
let's figure this out? And
the beauty of this is that the body already knows what layer needs to go first,
yeah, that's
bit by
so
bit.
true. Yeah, that's
So
so
I
true.
don't really have to, I don't really have to, like they can say, I'm having issues regarding anxiety. I have a lot of pent up fear. And anxiety is about preparing for stuff. So people could have adverse experiences regarding um, anxiety related emotions. There could be dread, there could be terror, there could be panic, there could be nervousness, there could be, what else is there? Regular fear. There could be a horrible experience they want to avoid, um, conflict, even being wishy-washy, where they're like, weak backbone because they don't know how to deal with things. So there's a lot of contributing factors that can emphasize the feeling of anxiety, but anxiety is just saying get prepared. And right now we're feeling a lot of it because we don't know what's going to happen in the
Mhm.
future. We're feeling it
Yeah.
right now. So, but being prepared, what the body is going to tell me is it's going to tell me what emotions are contributing to it, whether it be apprehension, um, hesitation, that sort of thing. And as we release all the different types of fear related emotions that fuel the anxiety mindset, then what ends up happening is the person starts to feel like they can be relaxed within themselves after about a week's time. If I release a lot at once, what ends up happening is that they have a rise and a fall, and it's sort of like a roller coaster, the first couple of ups and downs, the first couple of days. But then what ends up happening is that they then start to the roller coaster starts to get a little less what do you call it, volatile, and then they get into a state where it's a higher vibrational state, which means they can feel more empowered and more, what's the word for it, more focused. They can kick in their noradrenaline more to be more clear on what needs to be done. They
Yeah.
can write out their lists. They don't have to worry about, but what if that but what if component doesn't really rise up. It's like, this just needs to get done. These are priorities. And then I give them, and I do this other thing on the side, then I give them their way where they can use their intuition to determine what would be the priority. So they can even use a sway test, for example. What needs to get done first right now? Is it option 1, option 2, option 3? And when they let go of thinking about what needs to be done first and let their body respond,
Yeah.
it takes the whole thinking out of the equation. It just gets to the point where it's like, okay, my body's saying I got to do number 2 first. So you go and do number 2, and
Too.
that's it. And if there's like, you got a list of like 20 things on your list, you're probably not going to get them all done that day. But the
Yeah.
body will remind you, okay, so these are things that I think you should work on first. And as you do that, you're letting go of what needs to be done first, because then like you could have still underlying worries. But what if I don't do number 10 today? What's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
Right. So if you just let go and let the body decide, your intuition decide, it just makes it easier. And then when you ask the body, is there anything more that I should do today? And it says no, you can accept that
Yeah.
and say, I can now rest. And the body will say, yes, you can now rest.
Like,
And
finally, thank you.
yes, and
Yeah.
then that way it's almost like that whole monkey mind is now being quieted, because now the new authority is the body,
Yeah.
and it's not the mind or the brain.
Yeah.
So there's that, but releasing all the contributing emotions is the important thing, and regarding the emotion anxiety, because nowadays we're all trying to be prepared for everything, because we don't want to fail, or fall flat on our butt or on our face, and then he'd be humiliated because we weren't prepared for a question. If the body knew what was coming later that day or within 2-3 days, then you can then take note of that and say, my body's got my back. My body knows and supports me so that I am prepared for what's coming.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I didn't know that that person was going to ask me that question at the meeting, but I already knew because I took that step. That was a priority step. My body said to do it, and it prepared me ahead of time, even though I didn't know that was going to happen.
Yeah, it's almost like, again, it's like that new program, that subconscious mind and the soul are getting together, and they're kind of going, yeah, let's figure this out. Let's get this thing together,
Yes.
and go forward on that. That's fantastic. I always love hearing this stuff. I mean, I can't get enough of it. And that's kind of why I love this podcast, because I get to talk to you about all these great techniques. We get to expose people to these techniques that are available to them. And I think that's really important at this time in this crazy era of all this high stress and in fear and all that different things. And I think it's really important that you're doing. So do you do work with kids too as well, or is it mainly adults? Because I think, if you can get the kids at an earlier stage, if they had some type of, trauma, stuff like that, get that out of their bodies, get that out of their little bodies first, and then they can have, a normal life. They don't have to wait till, excuse me, when they're like, hold on.
Yeah.
45 or 50. Like the rest of us have a midlife crisis before we realize, yeah, we need to get this fixed. My life's shit. I need to figure, I don't know what's going on. But I think helping the kids first deal with that stuff, it's just going to make them healthier adults, and then we're going to have a healthier society. I think that's where I'm going with this.
Well, I have worked on a few kids, and this might sound a little woo for some of the people watching, but some of the parents
reach out to me. It's part of a woo channel we're on.
So they sometimes ask me if there's anything that we need to, like the parents, because they do work with me, and I tell them I can work on your kids if you like, and I'll submit a list of things that they went through, and the parents will verify, yeah, that was a horrible day, and when he was like 6 or 7, going to school, and the kids making fun of him because his ears stuck out too much, that sort of thing. And so I can request the release with the consent of the parent, or I can provide the information to the parent, and the parent can administer the release themselves. Because, how do I say this? The universe is all ether, all intelligent. We can connect to that intelligence, and it needs to take a moment to request a secure connection to these little ones, and with the consent of the parents. And generally, I think any person can tap into anybody and find out what their issue is emotionally, but you can't help that individual unless someone's given consent. So if it's the parent giving the consent for a kid around 12 or under, then great. I can then provide the information. They could administer it themselves onto the child. I'll let them know how much intention is going to be required to trigger the meridian system of the body, because that's what you're doing. You're triggering the meridian system of the body. And they come back to me and they say, wow, like she's a lot calmer, and or before she didn't want to join soccer, there was a little bit of apprehension and anxiety, but like 2 weeks later she's calling me and saying, Dad, I want to try out for soccer. And it's like, because that sense of motivation and confidence is back, saying, what's really holding me back? Nothing. I don't have that thing holding me back, that from me playing a physical sport, it could be a little bit of contact with other people. I don't feel afraid of getting hurt. I'd want the adventure of maybe scoring a goal, right?
Yeah.
So there's that, but there's also issues regarding unconscious kids in the classroom, and some kids are ultra sensitive, so they can pick up on other people's emotions. And so what we want to do is we want to definitely not only release. Yes, that's me. We want to release, but we also definitely want to empower the parents by giving them information regarding the emotions and what they're trying to say. And when we give the children the necessary information about what are the emotions they're trying to say, whether it be sadness, anger, shame, fear, or even excess happiness, because we can have that too, we want to inform them. Let's say if it's anger, if someone has made you angry, is there something you're trying to defend? Like, are you defending your integrity, your self-respect, you have to you want to establish those boundaries, and that's what anger is trying to tell you. You need to say no. You need to say, this is, I'm not going to tolerate this behavior, and if you don't stop, I'm going to inform an authoritative figure in the school to address that. And then maybe if you don't stop, it'll bring it to your parents, and then maybe they'll have to address it in the home. So it's important to make sure that we understand what the emotions are saying, and then also choose to release them. And if the children want to cry it out because of their anger and their frustration, their sadness about someone being unconscious to them, we want to let them flow, because once we let them flow, the emotion is like water. We don't want to dam it up. We want it to flow like a river. And once it flows, it's passing. And then we have to come back and say, what was the emotion telling us? And then next time around, we're going to address the situation with an appropriate response, as opposed to reactionary, which then person gets angered, then they get into a fight, they hurt somebody, and now they feel guilty and ashamed of hurting somebody. We don't want to get to the point where you have to deal with another emotion again.
Yeah.
We want to address it, but in a way that's going to be win-win for everybody. If the kids are given that power, that intelligence, there would be so many less bullying issues in school.
Yeah,
Right?
I think so. Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's just, as kids, we're such a, we could be horrible people, as adults, we're even worse, but as kids too, I mean, a lot of that trauma, just bullshit. And it's just crazy how often that can be, but giving
And a lot
those,
of adults haven't grown up either.
yeah, they're just like a bunch of man-childs running around, or,
Yeah.
I've been called a man-child a few times. Yeah. It wasn't until I did my work, and then it's like, oh, yeah, I guess she was right. Yeah, I was a bit of a man-child, but, we all go through those stages, but it's really important, I think, to really work with those kids. I think that's the underlying thing, and have that, because it's not something that's taught in the school and the curriculum. I mean, we're slowly you're getting educated. You're slowly seeing, a little bit more about emotional intelligence and that sort of thing, but it's not like a curriculum. Most parents, they just send I mean, I'm the product of the 70s. I mean, here, let's just take the kids and just throw them in school and leave them at that. I mean, nowadays, like a lot of parents are, their teachers are raising the kids, and it's not really the whole idea of school. They're supposed to be
Yeah.
educating, not parenting them, for sure. Anyways,
Yeah.
but I think that's fantastic. Now, one of the things I was really interested in too, as well, you do this thing particularly on Zoom. It's men escaping the trap and liberating the self. You want to maybe talk about that Zoom meeting?
Oh, it's funny how you mentioned that, because before we got started, I was thinking about a presentation, and and I actually got the slideshow up on screen just for reference, and that's kind of funny how you mentioned that.
Sometimes my intuition just kind of flows.
Yeah, works out well. So in that presentation, what I do is I inform men about what the emotions are trying to say, and understanding that in a way we have two egos. There's the one that will never die, that's our soul, and it has an agenda, it has a want and a need to express, right? And then we have our survival oriented ego, which wants to be safe, also likes to, what's the word, to be recognized, right?
Yeah.
And appreciated in that way. Sometimes it can do it in ways that can be manipulative.
Really? Never heard that before.
Exactly. But it also talks about, like, once we get into the emotions, then we get into the energy field and how things can get mucked up, because we're kind of like an onion. Like, we have a personal bubble, right? Our soul is not in our body, our soul surrounds our body, right? So we have our personal bubble, and there's layers. And the first one is generally the etheric one, and then you have the next layer up is the emotional one, which is the energy to motivate. So emotive, to motivate something, an action, right? And then you have the mind, the mental layer, and then you'll have other layers after that, which we're not going to get into because we're talking about emotions and mental today.
Yeah.
And those areas, because they're the first two areas we feel the most, are the most dense areas. They're not as expansive, but they have a lot of a strong discharge. So when someone is angry, it's not just energetic, it's also chemical, and you see a reaction in the body. And that's the reason why men and their fathers, usually because they don't know how to handle what the emotions are trying to say, they just want to like contain. And so that's the worst thing to do, is you have to understand, not contain. Once you understand what the emotions are trying to say, then you can allow them to be expressed in a way that's not going to hurt anybody, right? You just want to bring it down back to level, but really self-examine what's important. And when we get into it, we also talk about in this process, we also talk the human design system, and that everyone's a fingerprint in terms of energy. There's not going to be a single person like you and I ever again in the history of the universe. So everyone has a very unique energy blueprint. And so we go into not only understanding the emotions, we also understanding the centers in which are absorbing and giving off signals. So your heart's an organ, and it gives you the strength and the fortitude to move towards what you want to accomplish. And your spleen is there to keep you safe internally, so no viruses. Or it's a fear-oriented organ. It's meant to be really aware and to respond to external stimulus that could be harmful. And then toxicity, the liver is there for you to prevent yourself from being engaged in a toxic environment. So if you feel kind of sick in your solar plexus area when you're in an environment that's just not very pleasant to work in, then you're probably picking up on a toxic environment you want to get out of, and there'll be a response there, because you can be unhappy, you can get angry, you can get bitter, resentful in that environment.
Yeah, for sure.
So every energy center is going to give something off, and it's just important to pay attention to the feeling, right? And then understand, okay, I'm getting this from my environment. How do I respond? And the human design system gives me an understanding of how one specific person can take that information, transmute it, translate it, and then reflect back what needs to be said or done, or whatever actions needs to be done, so that they can feel like, okay, I've done what I can do regarding that. And the whole point is that once you liberate yourself from all the trauma, then you can honor your true expression and not feel apologetic for it, because you now understand how to express it in a way that's going to be win-win for everybody. And that's what self-mastery is all about.
Yeah, it's a very healthy aspect of that, which is so important, because, men, we don't do emotions well. It's either one or the other. It's very extremely closed off, or we just express it in very, very unhealthy ways, and a lot of anger. And for the longest time, I didn't know I was an angry guy, but I was a real angry guy. It would go from extreme. Like I just suppress it, because it actually wasn't even anger. It was even deeper than that. It was more rage. There was a lot of deep rage that went in there. And if I let that go, I knew where I'd go. And I was very fearful of that, because there was no middle ground. There was either 1 to level 300. Like it was going in, everything in between. Wow. So how often are you doing this Zoom event for us men here? I think it's really important that us men, we kind of have to, I always say that, we kind of get left out in the wind a lot of times, us men. It's like we got to figure this out on our own. There's not a lot of community and things to support for us sometimes. And I think this is really a quintessential time where we need to have that type of support. And for us guys, because there is a lot of guys out there who are probably hopefully listening to this, and if you guys are, and you're looking to heal those wounds, it's the liberation of that. It's the wholeness and the joy that you can find when you kind of get out of this I like kind of say the matrix of it, or just the program of being a male. Like we're so programmed to be a certain way. You got to be this. You're a guy. You got to be this. And I always hate those labels. Like you got to be this, and I never fit into that. Since I was a kid, I never fit into the traditional male. I love male stuff. Like I love macho shit. I don't mind. I love guns. I love cars. I hunt. I fish. Things like that. That's who I am. But there's a very deeper, softer side to me too, as well. It's very, that divine feminine, which you talk about, which I have a very good access to. So. I think that's great. Now, is this something that is it a paid form, or is it just open for people who want to join in? How's that work there, Nelson?
Well, at this point in time, I'm not charging a thing, and the reason why is because if I can, if men don't feel like they have to give up something in order to get something that could be really useful, they'd be more inclined to do it. And the last thing I want men to feel like is that they're going to become more girly as a result of this. And I'm thinking it has nothing to do with that at all. It's really just about self-mastery. That's all it is. If you want to be able to mitigate the possibility where you can say things you'll regret to the people that you love, and then leave yourself, if you want to avoid being isolated and left behind and abandoned by the people you love, then this is the kind of workshop you want to attend, because this is going to help you understand that, hey, could you do the emotion code on your own? Yes, you can. You can do the emotion code on your own. You simply just download the chart, you do some sway testing, you do some testing first, make sure it's working right, and then you go through the process. And then if I even have an Instagram video that I can link to where people can learn a little bit about it, try it themselves, but eventually you're going to hit a point where it's like, okay, enough emotions, now we got to tackle your thoughts.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, they're both intertwined. Yeah.
Yes, and even though I have over 100 different emotions, those emotions can fuel over 1,000 different thought forms.
Yeah.
Right, and it's very difficult for someone to find such information and such a vast array of options where you can isolate. Okay, my body's saying I need to let go of the thought of I'm unworthy, or so on and so forth. Especially nowadays with men thinking that no one wants to listen to my problems.
Yeah, that's
right?
so true. That is so
and
true.
it's like it's not worth talking to it with my family, and I don't even know if I trust my family with these things that I want to bring up, because then they might think that I'm unstable.
Yeah, that's true. That was one of my biggest fears. Like that was one of the things I loved about therapy. I mean, I had to pay somebody to listen to my shit
Yeah.
because nobody else would. And that was
Mhm.
one of the things I actually loved about therapy. I can just spill and she would just take it, just like, yeah, okay, let her go. And which was so fabulous.
Yes.
And, I really appreciate the work that you're doing. I think that's really important, from the emotional aspect of the energy psychology. There's so many different things that you can work with regarding like PTSD, anxiety, depression, all those crazy things that we feel and we go through, and the traumas, which is really important. And that being said, Nelson, we're almost out of time, brother.
Well, in regards to PTSD, it's all about releasing the energy from the memory. Once
Nice.
you release the energy from the memory, you can relive the memory like it's a movie, and all you are is an audience member. It's almost like switching from color to black and white, so you're not seeing the gore involved,
Yeah.
right? And that's the thing about PTSD. It's so real to relive those things, and certain noises that just trigger you. But if you remove the energetic triggers associated with the trauma, then whatever those noises or those specific flashes of light, for example, or those no longer trigger you anymore. You can actually still be able to handle everyday situations and not feel like you have to go into the washroom, into a toilet stall, and just find a way to get a coping mechanism of breathing to get you back to homeostasis again.
Yeah.
Now it's you don't have to you don't even need as many coping mechanisms for that. You just it doesn't trigger you, and that's the beauty.
Yeah, that's
and you're
amazing.
free.
Yeah, and that's liberating stuff. I know I have a few friends that had some PTSD issues, and they're basically free. And there's so much. Their whole life was just a lot of things they couldn't do just because of that PTSD. That being said, Nelson, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, where can they find you? If they want a session, they want to get all this trauma and get all this joy and freedom back in their lives, where can they find you, Nelson?
Well, I'm online, celestialwarmth.com, and the only reason why it's called that is because of how I felt inside when I awakened. I felt like a sun leaving my chest. And you can also find me on in Mississauga under Google reviews. So if you look up Celestial Warmth, you'll find even some reviews there of people that have had fibromyalgia symptoms and chronic pain issues and injuries from sports and so on and so forth. And it's all there. What else is there? You can
You got
also
Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Celestial
Is it
Warmth on,
under Celestial Warmth or is it under your name?
yeah, it's all Celestial Warmth all across the board.
Perfect. That's awesome. So I highly recommend it, guys and girls, if you're listening to this. I think it's the new way of just getting some of that freedom, that joy back in your life. I think it's really important. It's just you're gonna wish you probably did this years ago, which is one of the great things. And that being said, Nelson, thank you so much for your time, brother. I really appreciate this. You're bringing this to the light there, and like I always say to everybody that's on my show, I hope you are super busy after this. And you called me up, going, "Geez, I should have not been on that show of yours. Damn it."
You know what? Actually, no, because in the end, if I'm spending 8 hours of my day or 5 hours of my day, 4 days a week, just helping people purge, I'll be very happy because if anything, the greatest feeling I can get is making the world a little lighter, not just weight wise, but also brighter. And that's what we need moving forward in the future. We need a brighter world where people are less afraid to open up and love.
Nice. Well said. I really appreciate that. And thank you so much. I'm just going to close off the show here. This has been the Metaphysical Mentor Podcast with Michael Philpott. Thank you so much for joining me today, and goodbye for now.